to IOSH Singapore branch webinar with Bernie Doyle on APOSHO, where we talk about yesterday, today, and tomorrow. So this presentation will be held by, or will be presented by Bernie Doyle, Secretary General for APOSHO. Just a few housekeeping rules. Please ensure that while you are enjoying the presentation, please remain muted. We will be turning off the video, your camera, and we would appreciate that when we do the photo taking, that you turn your camera on so we can have a nice group photo. Also, please note that this session is currently being recorded. So in an event that you've missed out on certain points, you may wish to go back and have a look at this video recording again. Any questions, any feedback, please do put it into the chat box. The moderators will be looking at your questions, and Bernie will be happy to answer the questions that you will have. Please ensure that you can hear us well, and you can also see the screen as well. I would like to also welcome Tim Briggs, IOSH past president, and Harry Ho, our IOSH Singapore branch founder, into this webinar. So today we have Bernie Doyle, the Secretary General of APOSHO, who will be delivering this presentation with us. He'll be discussing the vision of APOSHO over the next few years, how it has a positive impact within the APAC region, and what he sees as the biggest challenge that APOSHO members face, and the suggestion that could come out from APOSHO from a health and safety standpoint. So I'll pass on this session to the MC, Andy Lewis, who will be presenting and introducing the speaker for tonight. Over to you, Andy.
Thank you, Nurul. Nurul is our president for the IOSH Singapore branch, so much appreciated. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for attending. This session today is to be delivered by Mr. Bernie Doyle, Secretary General of APOSHO, and also the Chairman and CEO of the NSCA Foundation here in Australia. Bernie has a long professional career as a senior executive and has worked in a number of organisations globally. He's worked in the automotive industry for both supply and manufacture, and has over 20 years experience with General Motors. Bernie undertook formal studies in business management, finance, sales and marketing. He's undertaken training both in Japan and America on topics such as lean manufacturing and the Toyota production system, Kansai. Bernie has been the director of the NSCA Foundation for over 25 years and is currently chairperson for the last 15. He's an honorary lifetime member of the NSCA Foundation and was recognised by the South Australian government in 2005 with an award for outstanding achievement in the areas of health and safety. Since retiring in 2014, in addition to his commitments with the NSCA Foundation, Bernie has also found time to consult with a number of small businesses and organisations, as well as serving as a director on numerous boards. He was appointed to the role of Secretary General of the Asia Pacific Occupational Health and Safety Organisation, APOSHO, in 2017, which is a position that he holds today. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Bernie Doyle.
Oh, thank you, Andy, and welcome everybody. I hope that you find the presentation interesting, because it covers, or part of it covers, the history of APOSHO. Just let me bring this one up. Let me share this with you. So the discussion today will be APOSHO yesterday, today, and tomorrow. So I had to do a fair amount of research to find about yesterday. There's not a great deal of information as to how we started. So bear with me as I walk you through, if we like, the formative years of APOSHO. Even in those days, we were called something quite different. It's all right, my dip. Okay. Maybe not the best way to do it. So 1985 is when 6 organizations sat down and started to talk about a cooperative system within the Asia Pacific system. So, and this is quite an interesting point here, because depending upon who you speak to, the actual 6 organizations do tend to differ. So we have a couple of definite. So we know for a fact Singapore was definitely there, India was there, Japan was there, and so was Australia. But again, talking to a number of different sources, the India and New Zealand and the Philippines tend to drift in and out as to whether they were there, whether they were contributing, or whether they are actually part of the original 6. What we don't have, unfortunately, is how this meeting in September 1985 actually came about. I can only imagine that there was a fair amount of discussion prior to it, but 1985, most of be long distance telephone calls, maybe even a ticker tape would have been the one. We certainly wouldn't have been talking to each other by email and other such wonderful contraptions that we have now. So Singapore offered to host it. System was quite different then. So the first chairperson as such was Clive Peterson, who was then the federal president of the National Safety Council of Australia, and he was given the honour of opening. We refer to as APOSHO 1, even though as I go through the presentation, you'll see that APOSHO was never our name to begin with. As we move on, next year in '86, the conference moved to Hong Kong, and the membership had grown to 13 organizations. We're not yet APOSHO, but in those early days, we were called the Coordinating Committee of Asia Pacific National Safety Councils. And my only viewpoint on this is when you look at the first 6, 4 of them were actually National Safety Council. Singapore had a National Safety Council, as did India, so did the Philippines at that time, and so did Australia. So I presume that's why they actually call themselves safety councils. There's by the 5th, and you can see that I've jumped from number 2 to number 5. I don't intend to go through each conference year by year, because we'll get to the Chinese New Year before we run out of time. But there are some significant dates that are worth actually discussing. So by the 5th conference, the number of member organizations had grown to 18. So when you take into consideration that was the 5th, so this would have been 1991, we're now in 2021 and we're at 29 organizations. So you can see that the 18 to 29 has happened. But what I can talk about a bit later is the churn that we had in members in these early days. The secretary, he wasn't called a Secretary General, then he was called a secretary. He produced a draft constitution, and we still have that constitution today that really drives everything that we do. And that gets subject to periodic reviews, insertions, removals. We actually took out teletext from our means of communication a couple of years back, and we actually inserted electronic mail just so we could try and keep up with movements. In those days, the chairman was not from the host organization, which is what happens today, but in fact, he was voted in on a 2-year term. By the 5th conference, the first committee had formed, which was, and it's quite logic, it should happen, was actually the membership screening committee, because I can only imagine by then we had a significant amount of interest the fact that in 5 years we'd gone from 6 to 18 organisations. There would have been a process that was needed to actually screen organisations who wish to join. Troubles then, and we fall into a massive historical hole because we don't have any information. I say limited. Limited is actually none of any conference that happened between number 4 to number 16. We know where it happened. We know when it happened, but as far as any taking of any minutes, committee meetings, AGM, etc., we actually don't have any of that. I can only pick up snippets of information that come through. So 8th conference, we had, the decision was made then to move away from the coordinating committee, and that's where APOSHO first came through. So APOSHO continued to be from the 8th conference onwards. The first honorary member was inducted in 1991, and Australia's doing well so far because of another Australian, Mr. Russell Leith from IFAP in Australia was our first honorary member. More committees were formed in this 4 to 16 conference period, and we brought in technical OHS systems, and education and training committees were formed. By APOSHO 17, we've now grown to 4 committees. So we had the membership screening committee, we had a technical committee, education training committee, and a OC Health and Safety Systems Committee. In Conference 18, IOSH was admitted as an affiliate member. I'll talk about the different levels of membership a bit later. They were admitted as an affiliate member during APOSHO 18 and have continued to be a strong supporter of APOSHO ever since that date. We've had numerous visits from current and past presidents, and I know that Tim is with us today, so glad you're joining us, Tim. I'm just trying to think which conference we met. I think it was Thailand, but correct me if I'm wrong there. And we've also had Bev, your chief executive, that came out to us in Singapore prior to IOSH Hong Kong hosting the APOSHO conference. IOSH Hong Kong has played a major role in the region. It was inaugurated in 1999 and then admitted to APOSHO in 2014, which was APOSHO 29. Andy Lowe, that many of you will know. Andy is my go-to person as far as history with the APOSHO. He sent me a few photographs of some of the APOSHO meetings, but I'm just trying to figure out which conference they were from. And I only found out in the past month that Andy actually chaired the second APOSHO conference in Hong Kong in 1986. But while we were gathering new members, a number had dropped out, and there's more than this, but they included, and these are organizations from these countries because we didn't seem to record the actual organization, but Bangladesh, we had some from China, Mongolia, Nepal, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Thailand, Papua New Guinea, New Zealand, and the USA. So we've had a fair amount of churn, most probably in that 10 to 20 conferences when we seem to have most people moving in and out. I would say in the last 9 to 10 years, I'm only aware of one organization, which was an association out of the United States of America that decided it wasn't for them. So we haven't had anyone leave. We certainly have plenty join, but we haven't had any that have left us, which says to a lot of people, we must be doing something right. So as of 2021, we now have 29 full members, and to be a full member, you have to be a non-for-profit and your organization needs to reside in the Southeast Asian Pacific region. We have associate members. They can be one of two things. They are typically semi-government, but do reside in the Asian Pacific region. And then we have affiliate members, which typically are from outside of the Southeast Asian region, and people like IOSH, National Safety Council of America. There's a couple more from America. We have some from Germany as well who join us as affiliate members. And then we have 17 active honorary members. So the list of honorary members is quite lengthy. But when I say active members, these are active honorary members that actually turn up regularly at our AGM. The problem we have is some of them were given the title honorary members some years ago, and we never ever saw them again after that. So we've actually changed the requirements now. So part of the procedure to be considered as an active honorary member is that you must actually sign up to the point that you agree to attend 3 of the next 5 conferences moving forward. So looking at it today, so we have a full member, an associate member, an affiliate member, and an honorary member. And we are only open to organizations, not to individuals. So as an individual, if you want to participate in APOSHO, you need actually to align yourself with one of the organizations. We don't have any government bodies. Although, to be fair, some of our full members have some input from government. They may appoint the chairman, as things like that, but predominantly they meet the requirements of residing in the Southeast Asian region and are health and safety organizations. And we started to see, and without, I can't mention anyone, but there's an organization that is will submit for full membership this year, which is slightly outside of what we would consider our normal trend for member, but that's fine. It's still in the OC health and safety, but taking a different viewpoint. And I'm really excited that we are starting to expand the number of safety organizations that want to be linked with APOSHO. We currently have 6 committees. Management and developer is one that really oversees the management of APOSHO. So the appointment of the Secretary General would actually come through the management. If we ever have to deal with disciplinary issues, which we've had to deal with before, that will actually come through the management. There's an exercise that we're going through at the moment, which talks about membership fees and all of the bits that go with that. That will actually be driven through membership. Changes to the Constitution actually have to go through the management committee. So the management committee is the first one that we run on our first day of a 4-day conference. Membership screening is the second one, because that's actually, as it says, deals with every level of membership. So people wishing to apply for affiliate, associate, honorary member, full member, or for regrading. So if we had an organization that was, should we say, an associate member in the region, but they'd actually changed the system under which they operated and maybe had less government interaction, they may put themselves forward to be regraded up into a full member. Education and training speaks for itself. Technical. Actually, technical is where we drive the website through, which is hosted by Kosha, one of our members out of Korea. OC health and safety systems, obviously ISO 45001 got a real discussion point through that over the past couple of years at the various committee meetings and AGM. And I'm thinking it was in Singapore that we had John Lacey from IOSH run a after hours introduction into 45,001, which was really well received by the membership. And then last but not least is a new committee that will start off this year, which is health and well-being, and that will cover such items such as stress, suicide prevention, anxiety, general well-being. So this has been driven by MSHOSH out of Malaysia, who will chair that meeting. And again, I'm really pleased to see that an organisation stepped up maybe 3 years ago and said, we need to be broadening the discussion points that we have. And they proposed health and well-being. Like most things, it has to go through committee. So this had to be driven through management and development. It was given the approval, and then it moves to the AGM, which is 4 days later, and was given full approval by the membership. We have 2 objectives. Our number one, these are not number 1, number 2, they are just 2 objectives, but we had to give them rather than 1 and 1, which would seem strange. So number 1 is to promote and enhance understanding and cooperation in the Asian Pacific region in areas related to occupational safety, health awareness and practices. And the second one is to promote networking and exchange of information on occupational safety and health awarenesses and practices in the Asian Pacific region. We periodically go back and have a look at those objectives, and if this is what we're all about, then what we try and do is ensure that the committees and then the conference that then sits in between the committee meetings and the AGM, we actually aim to make sure that we do promote and enhance understanding and cooperation, and we really push forward the issue of networking and the sharing of information. So in the snapshot, APOSHO is an international body composed of non-for-profit professional organisations devoted to the prevention of occupational accidents and diseases. I suppose to some extent it's our mission statement. And then the quick look back at history. We were initially called the Coordinating Committee for Asia Pacific and later renamed as what's now known as the 8th Annual Conference. So a bit of a snapshot of today. So we hold a 4-day conference every year in the Southeast Asian region. So first day is a committee meeting, and we spoke about the 6 committees that we have. You can apply to be a member of any of and all of the committees if you want to be, and the committee would typically vote on an issue, and then whether they voted for or against, if it's voted for, it would then get fast forwarded to the AGM for approval. Day 2 and 3, the International Safety Conference. And these typically would include keynotes and plenary sessions. This is all driven, so this is driven entirely by the host, and I'll talk a bit later how the host comes about. So as the Secretary General, I will work with the host, and this year you can see behind me, it's Japan, APOSHO 35. It's going to be held in Japan. So when an organisation wishes to be considered to host an APOSHO conference, we have a blueprint that they look at and they must agree to. And in essence, it says that day 1, we hold 6 committee meetings, day 2 and 3, International Safety Conference. We do ask that if there's a keynote speaker or a plenary session, consideration is given to APOSHO members to actually participate within that, and then the AGM is always held on the 4-day. So the host has to put his hand up and say, yes, happy to do that. where it's held, and there's always a local influence that comes into play. Typically on this, it's quite strange, day 2, which is day 1 of the conference, there's normally a local dignitary that stands up and says a few words and may even actually open the conference, and then it's over to the president of the host to actually welcome everybody. Secretary General will normally give a response, and then we bring on the keynote speakers, and then in most cases that goes to lunchtime, and then after lunch we will break out into the plenary sessions, sometimes 2, sometimes 3, sometimes 4. It depends upon the host. Hong Kong, I think I remember, had 4 plenary sessions. It was 3 plus a student session as well, which was really well received and really well appreciated by the members, because that gives them a huge choice when looking at topics and individual speakers within those topics. Day 4 is the AGM. It's pretty standard, you know, any items carried over from the previous year. Each of the 5, now 6 committee chairs will report on the undertakings from day 1, which by the time you get to day 4 seems like it was 2 weeks ago, and any item that committee wishes to present to the members at the AGM for consideration and possibly acceptance. Now, that could be just a change in the constitution, it could be membership, it could be anything else, but again, it's down for members to vote on. We will talk about the next upcoming APOSHOs, which we normally are going out 5 years then, and it may come down, we may have 2 organizations that wish to host in a particular year, and then it goes to a vote, normal sort of procedure. Once that AGM, though, the last part of the AGM is the ceremony of the handing over of the APOSHO flag and the gavel, which are given to the next year's host. So when we look at the conference, which does tend to form the backbone of APOSHO, to be considered for an APOSHO conference, you need to petition normally 5 years in advance. The process is a bit like the Olympics, by which you must receive the support of the APOSHO membership, which is, as I say, done at the AGM. An organization only gets 1 vote. We know that we've got 29 full members, so if you're petitioning for a particular year, you know that if you get 15 votes, then it's yours, because the other second or third party actually can't get past you. So just looking ahead now at the conferences, of the 31st APOSHO conference, this will be the first virtual conference that we've ever run. Up until last year, which should have been APOSHO 35 last year in Malaysia, we've had 34 consecutive years of hosting the conference. Last year, as we all well know, with the whole world stopped for a while, and MOSPA and IOSH, who were jointly going to hold last year, unfortunately had to let it go through. So APOSHO 35 moved from 2020 to 2021. Really unsure, would it be, you know, could we travel? Would be able to go in attendance? Would it be a hybrid, or would it be a full virtual conference? So it's taken a lot of discussion backwards and forwards, because the Constitution does not actually cover a virtual conference. So we sort of had to get approval from the members that they were quite happy to move ahead with the virtual conference. And then I started then to work with the host, which is JISHA, as to, okay, what does this conference look like? And it's interesting, one of the biggest hurdles that we had to face at the very beginning, when we knew that it was going to be virtual, is the actual starting time. Because if you go across from east to west, across Southeast Asia, And the membership, we've got about, I think, a 7.5, maybe 8.5 hour time difference. So from the Japanese, who always wish to be polite and be respectful, it was a case of, it doesn't matter what time I pick, someone's either going to start very early or someone's going to have to work really, really late, because it's impossible to get this right. Anyway, after what seem about 29 meetings, we actually got it sorted, and I think I got the short straw because I'm at the tail end. So I think on the first day with the committee meetings, my day will finish about 11 o'clock in Sydney. So anyway, so Japanese will do it this year. I'm sure they'll do it well. There will only be one. I can't give too much away because they're still working on the program, but we won't have any plenary sessions because it's just too hard to do it virtually on literally short notice. But it's going to be, I've seen the program already, or the draft program, so it's going to be very good. Real big plug now, because APOSHO next year is going to be hosted by my organization. It's going to be in Melbourne in November 2022. So I'm hoping by then the international travel restrictions have been eased or completely removed, and everyone will be able to travel. Hopefully by then, because the last conference would have been 2019 in China, people will be extremely keen and eager to meet, and my organization is working diligently to produce a good conference. We go further ahead to APOSHO 37, which will be held in Malaysia, October 2023. The host member will be APOSH, the Malaysian Society for Occupational Safety, and these are the people who actually chair the new Health and Wellbeing Committee. We go further out again to APOSHO 38, which will be held in 2024 in Thailand. The host member will be SHORPAT, the Safety and Health at Work Promotion. We're looking, it's all of the APOSHO conference tend to be in the final quarter of the year. So this year it's October. For me, next year it's November. Malaysia, the year after, looking at October. SHORPATs are looking at maybe early December, late November. And then we go out further again is APOSHO 39 in 2025, and that will be the National Safety Council of India. I believe it's being held again in New Delhi, and most will be in October to November timeframe. So any organization, so we've been on hold for literally 18 months, so there's not really been a great deal of interest about hosting what will be APOSHO 40. But again, you know, it's 5 years out. I've had some level of interest from a number of members, just in particularly new members, inquiring who does what, how do you go about it, and so there's a lot of discussion with about 3 or 4 really interested parties. Will go us out to 226. I'll just talk briefly about the role of the Secretary General. So as far as I can gather, over 35 years, there's been about 6 Honourable Secretary Generals. I'm not sure when the Honourable got slipped in, because it used to be just Secretary, and then I did see some paperwork that said Secretary General, and then by the time we'd got to APOSHO 24 and 25, the word Honourable came in, and the word Honourable is there just to make sure that you don't get paid for it, that you're doing it as a volunteer. That's just confirmation. What I did find out that Mr. Youssef from the National Safety Council of Singapore was actually in this role for many years, and I've been in touch with him recently to see if he can assist me with compiling some of the history, the early years of APOSHO. Mr. Jingmin Law from Hong Kong was, so he would be the last secretary. Prior to me, he was in it for 8 years, and the Secretary General is the only elected officer of APOSHO. So we're a bit thin on the ground from that point of view. the role of Secretary General is double-edged, because when I applied, I had to bring forward my vision as to where did I see APOSHO going. But at the same time, you actually acknowledge as a Secretary General, you actually serve the members. So you've still got to listen to the members, but at the same time, you're expected to take on board the role and the responsibility of the Secretary General and direct or guide the members through however long you're in as your tenure is as the Secretary General. So it's a double-edged sword to some extent, but you don't report to anyone as a committee or as a management board. You report to the membership. So it's now talk about tomorrow. So these are my views. Where we need to be, number one is we need to increase our presence in the region, and what I don't want is safety professionals talking to each other and one person said, "Oh, I'm from APOSHO, have you heard about us?" And the response is, "No." Is that a Korean car? Never heard of you. So even though we're well known, we're not that well known. You're obviously well known within your own circle. And I clearly see the conference as being the platform that should get bigger and better and actually increase the presence of APOSHO. And as we get bigger, we get better. Such forth. So again, APOSHO tomorrow, we are bigger. We are definitely going to be bigger. We'll be bigger from an organizational point of view, and we'll be bigger from our presence in the Southeast Asian region. This is our backyard. This is where we play. We really can't influence Europe, North America, South America, but we can influence what happens within Southeast Asia. So we're bigger, but we're actually closer. We are much closer now, thanks to the levels of technology that we have, that we can, likes of tonight is a prime example. I'm sitting in Adelaide in my computer room, which is also doubles up as the headquarters of APOSHO. And I'm talking to a whole lot of people from Catherine, and I presume Tim's in the UK as well, and Andy's in Sydney, and we have a whole lot of people. So we're bigger, but we are actually closer than we've ever been. The conference in future years will start to attract thousands of people, not just hundreds as we have at the moment, to our conference. So when we look at APOSHO tomorrow, currently there are conferences much stronger than ours. You get the World Congress, you look at IOSH, significantly larger. They will attract 3,000-4,000 delegates to a conference. We will attract 300 to 400. So we're currently seen as the weedy guy in the conference world because we've only got these 300 to 400. However, the big two, as I refer to, only hold their conference every 3 years, and they rotate between the north and southern hemisphere. So it's 6 years before they come down. So we had Singapore, I think it's 2017, we had World Congress, then it disappeared. Should have been in Canada last year. It's now going to be a virtual one next year. And then in 2023, it comes into Southern Hemisphere in Sydney, and the IOSH is the same. So that gives us a wonderful opportunity to secure this position in the region of this very large, highly informative conference that is held annually in the Southeast Asian region. So when I look at this, there are, I believe, 3 groups of delegates that attend an APOSHO conference. You've got the APOSHO family, who are extremely loyal, and wherever the conference is, they will attend. You will have the local OC health and safety professionals and safety managers who are local, who will also attend because they'll look at the agenda and say that's of interest to me. The third group, I think, is I call the floating delegate. This is the delegate from anywhere in the world who can go anywhere in the world, who wants to attend a first-rate, highly informative safety conference. That's the person that we need to attract. China, they had it to some extent, but they were mostly people from within China, but outside of the district we were in. It certainly happened in Hong Kong. We had the APOSHO family. We had a lot of people from Hong Kong, but we had a lot of what I call international pay-in delegates who came because they looked at, I presume, obviously the fact that IOSH were organising it gave it credits, but also the fact of the quality of the speakers and the way that it was organised drew great interest. I think that's a wonderful opportunity to be able to do that and to lock that position. APOSHO tomorrow, we come from different backgrounds, we have different beliefs, we even come from different religions. I mean, that's the makeup of the APOSHO family, but we have a common goal, and we believe that the safety of every individual and the fact that that individual should return home every day to his or her family, and that drives APOSHO family culture. APOSHO tomorrow, it's not without its challenges, of course. I'll be the first to admit that. Time is against me because I only have 4 years left in the role of SG, and even though that seems a fairly long time, when you're only meeting once a year, when you don't have a board or a management committee, and you're attempting to deal with, and if I look in the affiliates and the associate members are also very important, most will be close to 40 members, it's pretty difficult to drive change through. The way the constitution is set, the Secretary General can only have 2 terms. So from next year, I enter my 2nd term, and then in 3 years' time, they'll have to find someone else. So I really need to work exceedingly hard in the next 4 years to drive some of those visions that I have. A big one, and these can't be separated. We are not registered as an organization. If you're not registered, it's very difficult to draw sponsorship. You can't draw sponsorship because you don't have a bank account. You don't have a bank account because you're not registered. So we keep going back into that. But then the other fact is there's no point in having a bank account if you haven't got any money to put in it. So we have to talk about membership fees. Membership fees ties back into the registration. I got a lawyer here not here, but in Sydney, to actually do some pro bono work for me to look at establishing APOSHO as a registered organization. And the rough quote was somewhere between 15 to 25,000 US dollars to actually get APOSHO registered as a company with all of the legal paraphernalia that we do. To do that, we need to talk seriously about membership fees. And that's been on the agenda for a couple of years, and that will get raised again in APOSHO this year. I think we're moving forward. The issue of head office, whether head office is a physical location or a virtual location, still ties into the fact of one of the other members. In fact, it's Mr. Amarelli, my Singapore brother from NSCI Singapore. One of his visions is that APOSHO has an annual award, and he believes that if we were to offer awards to good performing organizations within the Southeast Asian region based upon a set criteria, based upon actually reviewing their submission and all the normal things that you have with that, that we should be able to attract some sponsorship. The fact is, you won't get sponsorship if you haven't got a bank account to put the money in, and if you're unregistered, it's difficult. So they're the That's the next set of challenges that that I see. So we've got there on one side. We've then got driving the conference as a platform that people can have a look at APOSHO and like what they see. The next 4 years are going to be busy. So I'm looking at the time. I've mostly be taking about 40 minutes, a bit longer than I would have loved to do, but hopefully I gave you a snapshot of APOSHO today, or yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Bernie. Really interesting, and it's great to understand how you're looking to take APOSHO forward. We do have a couple of questions. The first one is from Miraz. What do you think was the reason for the initial drop-off in membership?
Looking back through some of the, and it is limited paperwork, for argument's sake, I know there were 2 or 3 organizations that came in for maybe 1 year. And then when we started to investigate the background, there are at least 2 of them that were actually unions. And they weren't in that field that we wanted to be, which is a non-for-profit, limited government interference, ARC health and safety organization. We had a couple also of what I refer to as regulators or legislators who were purely government, did not fit the criteria. So I can't actually say if either we asked them to leave or they decided that they didn't fit into what we were looking for. And there's a number of organizations that I know of that just actually disbanded and they're actually not in existence anymore. The one from Nepal, as far as I can gather, was actually a mining company. And so they must have been went in under the pretense that it was a safety organization that operated in the mines. But in fact, when we digged in, they were actually a mining company. That was all in those, I call them the formative years when we had high churn. My exposure is now nearly 12 years. And as I say, we've only lost 1 organization in 12 years. And that was a voluntary decision by, it was the American Hygiene Association. And the CEO or vice president contacted me and said, he just didn't have enough horsepower to deal with North America and Southeast Asia. So he was backing his organization out of it. But it will be unusual on our annual, because AGMs are annual, at our AGM if we don't have submissions for membership. So I sit here today, I know that there's mostly 4 weeks away from the closing date. And I've got 4 submissions sitting in front of me now, so I haven't got Singapore's yet. That's all right. So it's quite likely that we'll see more full members and associate members. Associate members join this year.
Thank you for that. And we have I've got another question here from Ycha, I think is how you pronounce your name, so apologies if I get that wrong. Has there ever been any significant members from the China region, and have you seen a drop-off in interaction or a pull-out of those memberships more recently?
Well, as I just mentioned, in 11 years, I've only seen 1 organization that has officially withdrawn their membership. There's a couple of others that float on the outside that don't attend regularly. They may attend, shall we say, 2 out of 4 or 3 out of 5. And then you've got those that attend regular as clockwork, all that. So we're not seeing any drop off. The other part of it is the actual numbers of people from APOSHO who attend the conferences, and without doubt that is definitely increasing, because I can go back through the AGM where everyone attends and we keep an attendance list. So in some years we would have had maybe 65, 70 at the AGM. Now it wouldn't be unusual to see 140, 150 attending the AGM.
Awesome, thank you very much. Before I hand over to Nurul for the presentation, once that is completed, we'd like to take a group photo. So if you are happy to be in the group photo, when Nurul has completed the handover, we turn your camera on and we'll get a snap. So Nurul, thank you very much. Bernie, thank you very much. Very informative. Nurul, over to you.
Doyle, you are on mute.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you once again, Bernie. Appreciate the time that you've taken to share with all of us on what APOSHO is about and how it benefits the member organization. So with that, as the chair of IOSH Singapore branch, I would like to give you or present to you the certificate of appreciation. Can't really see. But let's just assume that what you're seeing right now is a certificate of appreciation. So I'm sending it over to Bernie.
There you go. Here it is. Have we seen it? There we go. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bernie. Appreciate. And thank you everyone
you.
once again for your time sharing with IOSH Singapore branch this evening.